Pomodoro Technique, time blocking, 2-minute rule, time tracking, eat the bug.
Which one is best for time management? Keep watching to find out.
Let's be honest, there's not a lot of new time management techniques anyone's coming up with these days. So in this video, we thought we would use some old techniques and tell you which ones we think are actually worth the hype. The question is, 1 to 10, how effective are these time management techniques?
Oh, I thought this was a rating scale of us. I thought we were going to rate us like as a couple.
No, but if it is...
We're getting a 10? Nice. Good job, us.
Yeah.
As rated by us. A quick caveat, and that is that one size does not fit all when it comes to time management tactics. Every person's brain works differently, so the strategies that help you may differ.
First up, we have the Pomodoro Technique. So in case you're unfamiliar, the Pomodoro Technique was created by this Italian author who used a kitchen timer in the shape of a tomato. And it's just basically the idea that you have one 25-minute session of focus followed by a 5-minute break, and you kind of break up your work into these 25 and 5-minute sessions. And it can be adapted with different time frames, so the 25-5 isn't a hard rule, but I love this little tool online. I think it's mostly a free tool. It's called pomofocus.io, and this is where you can set your own Pomodoro timers. If you checked out our video on productivity tips for sensitive people, you will remember that I talked about how I adjust the Pomodoro time frames to fit how much energy I have for that day. So what I really like about the Pomodoro Technique is that the timer helps me stay on task and accountable. I can't tell you how much it helps just knowing that the timer's running in the background, so I don't get distracted from whatever task I'm working on.
And what we don't like about it, this is specifically me, is that the timer stresses me the F out. So I tried to do Pomodoro Technique and it just did not work for the way that my brain works.
You need it less than I do.
This is true, but I'm just sharing the real. And our little rating scale of how effective we feel the Pomodoro Technique is, you give it a 8 out of 10?
For me personally, when I need to focus on a task, it is extremely helpful.
I give it a 1 out of 10. It is not my favorite. I don't use it, but I give it a 1 and not a 0 because it works so well for you and we work together.
True. Next up, we have time blocking. So again, in case you're not familiar, time blocking is merely the idea that you're assigning tasks to designated blocks on your calendar and stretching it for the amount of time that you want that task to take. Now, I used to hate how cluttered and overwhelming the interface of Google Cal felt.
Tried to get her to use Google Cal for like 10 years. Tried.
I just didn't use, I used a form of time blocking, but not using Google Cal. So every time I would see Jason's Google Cal, it really stressed me out. So instead, I would use Notion and I would do my tasks and only put a certain amount of blocks for that day. However, recently I realized that I was always having to carry things over to the next day. And eventually that cascade effect really does start to weigh on you and you feel like you're always behind. So recently, I was actually listening to this interview of CEO Sam Korkos on the Tim Ferriss show, and he said something that really stood out to me. He said, "Your time is finite and the number of digital items you can add to a to-do list is infinite. You are working with the wrong constraint, which is the amount of items you can fit in a database row as opposed to the number of things that you can fit in your finite time of your calendar." That finally was just like a wake-up call to me of realizing I need to constrain the items on my day to my physical time that I have available. So I did finally jump on the Google Cal train.
There was a day about a week ago when I got this notice that we were trying Google Cal together, and I was like, I'm sorry, what?
This just speaks to the fact that you always need to try new things because Google Cal's been around for how long, but sometimes you just need to introduce a new way of doing something. So I have found that visually matching tasks to the amount of time actually makes me better able to see when I'm overbooked, which was not the case when I was just using Notion. And I can be a lot more realistic about breaks between tasks. When I see a full calendar day where it's just back-to-back tasks, I realize that's actually not very realistic because I'm going to need to take a small break or switch between tasks and things like that. And let me just tell you that the game-changing hack for this is to come up with your own color scheme. So I don't have the same calendar as Jason's, which stresses me out. I use soothing, lighter colors, and it's much
I didn't
better.
even know colors were an option, to be honest. I just used what was there because I was just getting stuff done.
It's amazing.
What we love about time blocking is that previous us does all the hard work of decision making. So when you're setting up your calendar for the week, you plot out everything, and then when the day comes up or the time of that day comes up, you've already made the decision of what to work on. So it's really nice.
And I love that it's a way to protect your non-negotiables because if you plot the things that you want to make sure that you do in your life instead of your work first, then your workouts and your daily walks and things like that, you can make sure that that time is protected. The only thing that I'll say say we don't necessarily like is that when the calendar does get too full, it can feel stressful. But I actually think that this is a feature and not a bug, because that's actually the point of time blocking, is so that you can visually see, oh, I am overbooked and it does feel stressful, so I should make some changes to change that.
How effective are we rating time blocking? You're giving it a
10 out of 10. Must have.
Nice. I'm giving it a 12 out of 10. Yeah. It's not only a must have, it's a must have.
It's how we get things done. Moving on to our third strategy, the 2-minute rule. This is from David Allen, who wrote the book Getting Things Done. And it's simply the idea that if a task can be completed in 2 minutes or less, it should be done immediately. The reason I like this rule is because it's basically the idea of like, oh, I need to text that friend. And then you're like, no, I'll do it later because I'm like in the middle of a task. Then you're like, I need to take out the trash. And then you're like, I'll do it later. I need to sign that document. Do it later. Hang up my clothes. Do it later. Clean out the fridge.
Buy a fridge? I thought that was buy a fridge.
Clean out the fridge. But before you know it, this is what's happening in your brain all the time, because all these little tasks add up. And instead, the 2-minute rule says, immediately when I think about texting my friend, I'm just going to do it. And then it gets out of my brain. And basically all of these tasks get cleared on a regular basis, which is going to lead to a much more Zen-like brain. Now, if you want to take action on the 2-minute rule, here are some ideas. You could create a catch-up. We like calling it catch-up, like French fries, because it's fun. Yeah. But you could create a catch-up block once a week where you kind of catch up on all those little tasks. This would be different than the 2-minute rule, doing it immediately. But I still like this idea of designating time to actually take care of all of those 2-minute tasks. Or you could actually just have an entire admin day once a week where that is a designated day when you actually do all of those little tasks. So this is an adaptation on the 2-minute rule if the immediate, right when you think about it, doesn't work for you. Now, I will say for me personally, I don't use this all the time. However, this idea really helped me break the habit of procrastinating on small tasks. Even like family members of mine have commented how I've gotten so much better at this.
Really just texting, for just being honest.
No,
it's just like so much better
it's
texting.
texting. It's little things. I remember being a kid in school. I was always the kid who forgot to get my permission slip signed, and I carried a lot of shame with that. But permission slips are the perfect example of a 2-minute task. And now I'm not ashamed anymore because I do those 2-minute tasks right when I think about it.
Now, probably the only downside to the 2-minute rule here is that if you're in a deep focus mode, the last thing you want are these little distractions that take you out of that mode, because getting into that deep work mode is very difficult. So it just can be something that can be a little bit difficult if you're in that and you want to go, oh, I need to go answer this text message right now. Maybe it is good to wait and put that off into a catch-up time.
Exactly. That's why I don't use it all the time.
How effective do we rate the 2-minute rule?
6 out of 10. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't.
I give it an 8 out of 10 because it is something that I think I'm just naturally inherently good at and that I like to do, is just get the thing done and not think about it. So I think it's pretty effective.
Number 4 time management strategy is time tracking. So time tracking is the idea of recording and analyzing how you spend your time throughout the week. It's useful to compare tasks and project time estimates so that you get better at allocating your time, and it helps you identify those time wasters because you're actually having to write down, oh, spent about an hour scrolling Instagram. We actually continue to do this for every big project that we do. We write down the task list, and then we write down how many minutes, in this case, we think that task is going to take. And that allows us to see how many total hours the project will take before we ever even spend 1 minute on it. Then we actually compare those estimates with how long the tasks actually took, which allows us to get better at our estimates in the future. What does this actually look like? Well, for me, now that I'm using Google Cal again, I will basically do the blocks throughout the week, and then I will normalize all of this at the end of the week and put into my task list in Notion how long each task actually took me by just looking at the blocks of my calendar. But I can also utilize buttons in our Notion system. I just have a button that basically says start my task timer now, and it assigns a task start time, and the same with a task end time, and it adds up the total time spent on that task automatically.
One thing that we really like about time tracking is that it's really good to learn how long tasks and projects take for future you to be able to estimate how long those tasks will take moving forward.
Especially if you're not someone who has a really strong grasp of how long things take. It helps you to see physically, oh, I thought that was going to take 2 hours. It took 4 hours. And so now I know that I'm just someone who the time can get away from me easily. And that helps me in estimating in the future.
Probably the real only downside for us at this point with time tracking is that it just takes extra time to track your time.
Yeah.
So it just is one of those like, oh, I don't want to do this, but it is really helpful to keep doing it. So we continue to do it. Rating the effectiveness of time tracking, you give it a
7 out out of 10. I think
Nice.
it's very helpful.
Yeah, and I give it an 8 out of 10. Also think it's pretty helpful. Not the most helpful. Again, the must-have, time blocking, but time tracking is helpful.
And finally, we have Eat the Frog, except my icon pack didn't have a frog, so we went with Eat the Bug.
Yeah, also don't eat frogs, you know? If you're going to eat anything,
cute.
eat a bug. Yeah, they're cute.
Don't eat a frog.
Yeah.
Eat the Frog is the idea popularized by author Brian Tracy, and it basically says the frog or the bug represents the task that you're dreading or the one that you find challenging. And the idea is you complete it early on in the day, first thing, and you basically start your day with a sense of accomplishment. Now, the reason I like this idea is because my energy and self-discipline does tend to be the highest in the morning, so that idea works for me. But I don't always want to use that energy on the bug task, the thing that I don't want to do. Sometimes I want to use that on the task that I'm most excited about, the most creative task, the most deep thinking task, not necessarily the one that I'm not looking forward to.
And giving a rating to Eat the Bug, you give it a 5 out of 10.
I give it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that great for me.
I give it a 9 out of 10. This is something I just always have done. It's just put all the first tasks of my day to be the ones that are eating the bug or the frog. And I just get them done and knock them out. And then I can move on the rest of my day with all the fun stuff that I want to do.
Yeah, you've always done this. And those are our time management hacks. Let's see where they stack up.
Whoa! Time blocking at
Time
the top
blocking.
of the time management pyramid staircase thing that we made here. Yeah.
I kind of pictured it more of like an Olympic podium with 5 participants.
Very nice.
Yeah, so the idea here, we hope you enjoyed this video and we hope that you got some ideas of maybe one of these that you have yet to try that you can try and get better at your time management. Thanks for watching our Calm Business Encyclopedia series, your A to Z guide for running a business that's predictable, profitable, and peaceful. If you want to find out how calm your business currently is, take our Calm Business quiz over at wanderingaimfully.com/score and get personalized ideas on how to reduce the chaos, stop scrambling for income, and end the cycle of burnout once and for all.
Calm Biz Quiz.